So I was traveling in Central America. Looking for cacao. And I had heard there was someone who grew cacao, up this road. A little paved two-lane road. And so I started driving up the road, and in a small town there was a little tienda, a little shop, with the typical, you walk in the door and there's nothing but soda and candy. You know the type, and chips and that sort of thing. And obviously it's the perfect place to ask, where's the person that grows cacao? And I walk into the shop, and right on the counter where you pay is a little dish of obviously homemade, molded, very high-end European-style chocolates. You don't find that in a tienda in the middle of nowhere. I bought one. It was good. It was really good. It was really smooth. It was extremely well made, in the style of any good homemade European style, molded, like hearts and stars and all that stuff. And so I got directions to the lady's place and went there, and she welcomed me in, and she showed me her kitchen where she made she made them right in her kitchen. And she showed me her cacao trees on the property behind the house. And they were mostly highly productive hybrid trees, for the most part. And she was highly knowledgeable in cacao, in kitchen cacao production. And I had a lot of fun talking with her. And as I was leaving, she said, how would you like to join me on a little trip? If I can arrange it. And I said, sure. And she was helping an indigenous community, and I mean an indigenous community who lives totally off the grid, 2 miles walk, no road, way out there in the middle of the rainforest. And she said, they don't do visitors. They don't do gringos. There's guards on the trail. You don't visit them. And she was helping them get a better price for their cacao because they were getting ripped off by the local distributors. They should have been getting twice as much by the person who was buying it to then take it to the next place and all of that. And she said, I think, since you seem like a nice guy and you won't be, disruptive in an indigenous community where respect is the number one thing above all else. And I said, yeah, and they do cacao? And she said, it's the center of their culture. So I went with her and a translator because they don't speak Spanish. Nobody in the village spoke Spanish. So we had to go with a translator, somebody from the tribe who had come out to live in one of the towns and had learned Spanish. And so we went in. And the entire village came out. Like, what else are they going to do? surrounded her and the people in the village that had to do with the negotiations of prices and arrangements and things like that. And it went back and forth from Indigenous language to translate it into Spanish, and then she'd translate the Spanish into English for me, and then, it would go, yeah. It would go like that, and she'd say something, and everybody in the community would be talking at once. I mean, literally, everybody talking at once, and they could all understand each other and were very clear about what was being said. And they'd reach a consensus, and then it would go back through the Spanish to this lady, and she was helping them. And I kind of noticed, because I'm just standing there, I'm not taking part in the conversation. I don't know anything about the local politics or the local transportation or anything. So I'm not involved in the conversation. I'm just standing there with her. And they're kind of looking at me like, what the fuck are you here for? Kind of. And so when the arrangements are made, when they finish whatever business they were conducting, when the arrangements were made, I was literally asked what I was there for. Because they don't just invite people up. She had invited me up. And I didn't seem to have a purpose there, so they asked me why I was there. And so I said in English, and it was translated into Spanish, and then it was translated into their language. And I said, well, I've been working with the cacao spirit. And I've been helping other Westerners like me work with the cacao spirit. And I heard you worked with the cacao spirit. So I wondered if you would like to share. And that was translated into Spanish and translated into their language, and just a wave of chatter went through. And then out of the village elders came running, with the shamans right behind them. And yakety yakety yak, and the translator had to repeat everything and say it all again, and the head village shaman stepped in front of me, and of course it had to be translated all the way around. And what I heard was, we have been waiting for 400 years for someone to ask us what we do, meaning as a people. So this led to, quite a conversation. And the head shaman volunteered to walk a month through the rainforest alone. And the rainforest there, it's like up like this and down like that and cross a wild river and up like this and down like that. He offered to do that for a month to get his favorite cacao for me. Well, so that's the story. I was in another place in Costa Rica, and I was hitchhiking, and have you ever seen a really tricked out Land Rover with giant tires and the snorkel so it can drive underwater, and all the the special lights and just everything. It pulls over, and I get in. And it's a bunch of hippies. And, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm going around sampling and studying cacao. Oh, what's cacao? And, what do you do with it? And all of this stuff. And I said, well, I do ceremonies with it, and I do things like that. And they said, oh, really? And they say, you want to come to our place? And I said, okay. Well, little did I know they lived way out there, and they're living on bananas and coconuts, and once every 2 weeks they go into town to get rice and things like that. And the road into their place, at least part of the road, literally goes up waterfalls, with water coming down the river, over the front of the truck, and up the windshield like that. And I did cacao ceremonies there. A couple weeks later, I went down with them, and one of the guys that was in the truck said, hey, there's an indigenous village, and he gave me a little sketch map of where it was. And he said, they do a bunch of cacao there. And a number of them speak Spanish. And I said, oh, all right, that's cool. And I spent some time doing a couple cacao ceremonies in that area, and then one afternoon I walked to the trailhead and walked, I don't know, half a mile up the trail and found a really nice place to hang my hammock next to a water source and spent the night there. And because I'd kind of been clued in about their schedule, the next morning about 4 a.m. I started hiking. With a headlamp. And I got to the village about 7, and they were just starting the cooking fires and this and that. And I spoke with somebody, and in my atrocious Spanish, and expressed an interest in cacao, chocolate. Let them sample some of my chocolate, which by that time I was making here. And a 9-year-old kid came and took my hand and said, and we went off into the jungle and around the back of a small mountain, a hill, and up the hill to a cave that I would call it a rock shelter, but they call it a cave down there, cueva. And all the shamans and important people in the village were sitting in a circle in this rock shelter. And it was obvious they were waiting for me. And so I sat down, and we started to talk, mostly by drawing pictures in the dirt. The little kid went off into the rainforest and came back with a big bundle of sticks, about this long, so we could all sketch in the dirt in the cave floor and communicate. And use a few Spanish and English words. I had a Spanish-English dictionary with me. And I learned that before they went to war with another tribe, they sat in that cave and meditated for a month. The village brought them food. They meditated in that cave before they went to war. And I said, when does the war start? And they said, last week. And I'm sitting with my back to the entrance, and I'm going, and they're howling with laughter. They think it's the funniest thing. So we all drink cacao. Literally, they invite me to go to war with them. Now, what I realized later that they were using the Spanish term for war. Is that guerra? Guerra. Guerra. Because that's how they understand Western people solve their differences with other Western people. They have a war. So they were using that term of how they solve their differences with other people. Well, they drink cacao. They close their eyes. And they go into another dimension. And they go. And I looked it up on Google Maps, and it was 54 miles away. That's 75 kilometers. And they go visit the other group of shamans from the other village drinking in their cave. And they sit together and they solve their differences. Nobody gets hurt. So I'm sitting there and I start getting sleepy. And I don't get sleepy when I drink cacao, but I start getting sleepy, and then I start like nodding off. And I nod off and I feel a hand on my shoulder, but it's not a physical hand. And I go with them. And I could not get through the barrier. I had too much fear. And I could see them all down below, and they're all going, like. So after a while, I just came back to the cave, and about 4 hours later, everybody returned, and all the people that I was sitting with, who were all sound asleep, they all woke up. But they did take me to some amazing places. If you can imagine a rainforest, 10 times more biodiverse than any place on the planet, where you can literally communicate with every single leaf. And all the creatures. And there's no boogeymen, there's no jaguars hiding in the bushes. They're all your friends. And they all come out and they greet you.